And good morning once again, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD's Up All Night nonstop coverage of Championship Week, coming to you at almost 3 o'clock in the morning here, East Coast time on Saturday, March 12th. And good night.
Okay. Good show, Chad. Good
I'm
show.
sorry. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Joining us, John Salika. John, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing quite well and happy to see all sorts of exciting finishes. And did some shots beat the buzzer? We'll find out.
Right.
And also, David Griggs. David, how are you?
I'm doing good, and I know that we hadn't planned on doing this, but why don't we build an entire bracket on the air tonight?
Yeah, let's do that. No problem. I don't need to sleep until next month.
Right. Yes.
No. How about we look at some brackets instead? And what we're going to
Okay.
do here is we're going to go through all of today's action like we do. We're also going to update our survival board, send our nightly tweet over to the Chairman Commissioner Joe Castiglione, and do whatever else might happen to come up during the course of the show.
Well, we got to update the Hoops HD committee's progress.
The Hoops HG Committee's progress, absolutely. We'll get to that also. But let's start with some brackets. You should see them up on my screen right now. And the conference to discuss here, the conference of the day, I think, was the American. We said last night that UConn Cincinnati is probably the most important game on the day. David, maybe the best game of the year, or close to, or arguably the
Close
best game
to
of the
it.
year.
It was one of the most exciting considering the stakes of the game. Oklahoma, Kansas, the other one, was probably a better game as far as how well played it was, but it didn't have the stakes that this game had. Both those teams are still protected seeds. It's possible they'll both end up as one seeds. Whereas you came into this this UConn Cincinnati game thinking it might put the loser out, and whereas it would be a good win for the winner, it would be a bad loss for the loser, and they did not disappoint. It was back and forth. One of the things that the last second 80-foot shot or whatever it was took away was that we've already forgotten how good the game was in regulation before it even got to overtime.
And don't forget, I mean, Johnson for Cincinnati hits a three with zero point 0.8 seconds left to put them up, which is an incredible shot to begin with.
Right.
And then Jalen Adams with the three-quarter court shot, while Cincinnati is off running around celebrating, not even on the court anymore. It was
And the timing of it, and again, like we're here at Hoops HD, we got all the games up, and we're kind of on the call together in the room together. And before that, somebody had made the comment about how it had been kind of a boring start to the day, not much going on. In this game, Cincinnati kind of jumped out ahead, and UConn had to come back. But what a react! I mean, it was just like all five people. Oh my God! Just jump! It was unbelievable.
And John, the other half of the bracket. How about the Green Wave?
I can only conclude that both Houston and Tulsa were also partying after watching UConn hit their shot to extend the game, but there was some very strange circumstances revolving around Tulane's program where rumors were spreading that their coach had already been fired, although that has not been confirmed. And then after Houston no-showed, Tulsa outdid them and just lost to the tune of 20-plus points in a game that they absolutely had to have, and
It wasn't
fun in the NIT.
It wasn't even as close as that 22-point margin. And now we've got a Temple UConn game as the early semifinal tomorrow. A standard type of game. I think it's a good game. I think both teams should still be in, but there's a little bit of desperation. Both of them, neither one is comfortable at this point. And then Tulane versus Memphis. And one of those two teams will be playing on Sunday afternoon in the championship game, meaning that contingency brackets are now going to be required, David.
Yeah, they will be, and both these teams had crazy years. Yesterday we joked, well, didn't really joke, but this St. Louis did something, while comical, very bad form, firing their coach, issuing the press release about Jim Cruz before the press conference after they had lost their last game. If this is true today, Tulane was actually in the works of firing their coach during the game, a game in which they won. It's a winnable game tomorrow, not because Tulane's good, but because Memphis isn't. It's very possible they'll be in the championship game with a chance to go to the NCAA tournament.
And this happened almost 2 years to the day when Houston had beaten SMU to knock the Mustangs out of contention for
Yeah.
an NCAA bid at that time.
Yeah, Houston, my pick to win it all. I really liked how they were playing at the end of the year. Just really bad loss today.
Let's keep going here. And in the Atlantic 10 today, obviously CBS has not bothered updating us with any scores in the A10. They obviously didn't care about the second half of the day. Kind of funny because they're broadcasting the A10 semifinals tomorrow. But
Right.
in the top half of the bracket, Dayton and St. Joe's both won. St. Joe's actually was down pretty big to GW early and had a nice comeback to win that game. I'll give you the scores here. 85-70, VCU took care of UMass fairly easily. But in the overtime upset here, Davidson knocked out St. Bonnie's 90-86.
Yeah,
The
something
matchups
else
aren't even right
CBS
on the
doesn't
screen.
have right in the Met. Oh, come on, CBS.
Yeah. Anyhow, it is going to be Davidson versus VCU is going to be not the quarterfinal, but the semifinal tomorrow. So
Yeah.
ignore everything else you see there. Davidson, VCU. John, the Bonnies done now?
If they're not done yet, they're pretty close, but I think it's safe to say that we're also going to probably need a contingency for the Atlantic 10 as well, unless VCU gets voted into the field, which will reveal later on as to whether or not they got in tonight's round of balloting.
Yeah, the Bonnies have a couple good things. They won at St. Joe's. St. Joe's is probably in the field. We voted them in. We'll get to that later. And they won at Dayton, who, as we showed you, was in last night. Those are two really good wins relative to the bubble. There's not going to be too many other bubble teams that have two wins as good as that. But, God, they really needed to get it done today. Davidson, not particularly good, not even an NIT team. The Bonnies needed this win. Not that they needed to win, they just needed not to lose so much.
I guess VCU, another team that's in the bubble here, they had a shot in the semifinal to pick up a decent win against the St. Bonaventure team. Now they got to play Davidson. If they lose the game there, that's a bad loss. Now that really hurts your profile. If they win the game, it doesn't give you the bigger marquee win. And more dangerously, if you lose the game also, on top of that, Davidson could take an automatic bid and knock somebody out of the field that way.
Right.
Let's keep going, though. Over here in the Big Ten, it was another conference that was in the quarterfinal round. Hopefully we have the right scores and matchups on the screen, and it looks like we do. And in the best early game of the day was the Michigan-Indiana game, though, David.
It really was. Indiana, I mean, I kept thinking that they were going to pull away and blow it open, and, you know, they'd get up by 6 and Michigan would come back. They'd get up by 8 and Michigan would come back. It just ended in dramatic fashion. Indiana was up 2 possessions. Michigan scored. Indiana had the ball, couldn't score. Michigan ties it. Indiana had a chance again. And then Michigan hit a shot at the buzzer to get a win that I think keeps them in the discussion, whereas had they not won this game, I don't think they would have been going to the NCAAs.
Besides UConn, Michigan is the only bubble team that really did itself a huge favor today.
Yeah, and John, the other 3 games were not very close and chalk held in them, but setting up a couple interesting semifinals tomorrow. Michigan-Purdue, I think Michigan with a win could pretty much lock up a bid, and Michigan State-Maryland, another interesting game there.
Yeah, in some ways, this is also a de facto championship game right here between the Spartans and the Terrapins. But Michigan and Purdue will certainly be a feisty game in its own right.
So you think whoever wins Michigan State Maryland would take care of Purdue even in the title game? Is that what you're saying?
More probable than not.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think this Purdue team is playing pretty good right now also. But let's go on to the SEC, one other conference that was in the quarterfinal round today, where we saw a South Carolina team that desperately in need of a win here to really lock up a bid, and David, it didn't quite happen.
No, Georgia beat them for the 3rd time this year, and I still think South Carolina will end up getting in. At least I think the real committee will take them. I don't know about what the Hoops HD committee will do, but they really could have used this. Not that Georgia's a great team, but at this point, any sort of win of any sort of note on a neutral floor would have been helpful.
And that was a game that South Carolina led much of the way, but were never able to get a comfortable margin. I mean, they had the ball. They looked like they were going to get the final shot off in regulation, but after Georgia got a rebound, the Gamecocks fouled them and wound up making the difference.
Well, John, another team that lost in the early game there, Florida. Do you think that failing to pick up this additional marquee win is fatal to any tournament chances for the Gators?
I think it's time to turn the lights out in Gainesville, so have fun in the NIT.
And now we've got semifinals coming up tomorrow, A&M versus LSU, Kentucky versus Georgia. I'm expecting an A&M Kentucky championship game, but we could have another potential bid stealer here if we don't have that matchup.
Yep.
Let's complete the conferences that are not going into the championship game tomorrow. The only other conference that was in the quarterfinal round, that was the Sun Belt today. We're in an interesting format here. Little Rock and Louisiana Monroe are the only two teams left in the country that have not started their conference tournament play yet. They won't start till tomorrow. And John, we saw not really much in terms of the two games today, but anything you're looking forward to in these two semifinals coming up tomorrow night?
Well, if you look at what's happened in the past couple of weeks, Little Rock is not going to have any margin for error should they lose either tomorrow or on Sunday, so they are well advised to beat Lafayette and either Arlington or Monroe in the championship game tomorrow or Sunday.
And I agree with that. I mean, I would hate to see Little Rock miss the tournament after they had such a great year. Had they not lost that last game to Appalachian State, it's a lot easier to make a case for them, but they did. I think they need to win it to get in. And
yeah, I think they had room for one more bad loss. Unfortunately, they used it up in the regular season, which means they can't afford it in the conference tournament.
Right. And these are not good teams, relatively speaking to the tournament. Little Rock should win both of these. They're bye games, is what they are.
We'll see what happens. We'll finally get to see Little Rock play conference tournament action starting tomorrow. Let's move on to some of the conferences that were in the semifinals, though, and whose championship games are coming up tomorrow. And we'll start in the ACC, where David, North Carolina looked like a number one seed today.
Yeah.
And then some.
They took Notre Dame apart and then broke the pieces after they took them apart. It was a massacre. It got so bad I changed the station. The other game, pretty good. I mean, really entertaining game. I don't think anything's really moved, which when chalk holds, it really doesn't. The teams that were supposed to win kind of won. And, I don't think Virginia really moves up or Miami really moves down after that game, but a nice win for Virginia.
And the good news for North Carolina is they finally get to play Notre Dame and Virginia twice, but this is going to be a de facto home game for the Cavaliers for a change after so many tournaments that have been played within Greensboro and Charlotte.
Well, John, my question to you was North Carolina, Virginia tomorrow now. Is this a battle for a one seed?
Oh, the winner of this game is absolutely going to be assured of a one seed, but I don't think a case can be made for the loser at this point.
I'm not so sure North Carolina gets it. I'm certain Virginia will.
I think it comes down to a few things, including what might happen in the Pac-12 championship game. And since I just mentioned the Pac-12, why don't I go ahead and skip ahead? We'll go right over to the Pac-12. Right before we came on, we watched the second of these two semifinals. As despite some really lousy first round games, David, the conference sure made up for it today with these semifinals.
Yeah, 2 overtime games, 2 overtime thrillers, really. The way, especially the first one, Arizona way behind came thundering back. Arizona's paper isn't that strong, but they've looked so good so many times. They're not a team you want to face in March, as the saying goes, but yeah, what an entertaining game. And again, the chalk holds. Oregon should do no worse than a 2, regardless of what happens tomorrow. And Utah, I really like this Utah team. Had to really fight it out today. Needed not just a shot at the buzzer, they needed to go the length of the court in 4 seconds to get a shot off to force overtime, which normally would have been the most amazing thing we had all day, but I'm not even so sure it made the top 5.
Yeah, because that was only a 2-point bucket,
Right.
although that one did count.
Well, let's talk about the 3-point buckets at half-court shots that did not count, and let's go over to the Big 12 with that, and where after a decent game between Kansas and Baylor, Kansas actually had a fairly big lead. Baylor made a late run here, I believe, but West Virginia, Oklahoma, John, Buddy Hield may have pulled off one of the highlight shots of his career, except for one little problem.
Yeah, the shot that didn't count, although you could probably argue that if he hadn't cemented his legacy as Player of the Year, that shot should have been the cherry on top. But even in a losing effort, it was a very good effort on the behalf of the Sooners. But as far as West Virginia, I think this puts them in the discussion for a 2 seed or possibly a 1 if they can beat Kansas for the second time this year.
Yeah, David, you brought this up. If West Virginia beats Oklahoma, Kansas on back-to-back days, don't they deserve to be in that 1 seed talk?
Absolutely, and it isn't a team that anybody had really talked about getting a 1 seed, but we're talking about Oklahoma. West Virginia finished ahead of Oklahoma. West Virginia has beaten Oklahoma twice. If they beat Kansas tomorrow, I don't know if you put them up on the 1 line or not, but to not even consider it, the top of this profile is going to be unbelievable. Like, not only do they have wins away from home against other protected seeds, they have wins away from home against other 1 seeds multiple times. I think you do. Now, again, they have a few more losses than what we're used to seeing with 1 seeds, but if they win this championship tomorrow, and they have 2 wins over Oklahoma and 2 over Kansas, because they beat Kansas, albeit at home, during the regular season. That is an amazing, amazing profile.
Their non-conference was not that great, but it certainly wasn't as atrocious as what Notre Dame had last year, and they've more than made up for that in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas, another team in the 1 seed discussion. We think win or lose, they are clearly number 1 and possibly number 1 overall, no matter what happens tomorrow. Actually, I'd say they are number 1 overall, no matter what.
Right.
But the other team in the 1 seed discussion is in the Big East, which was also in the semifinals today, David, as Villanova made it into the Big East title game, getting by Providence, and then as we predicted here, or at least some of us predicted, Seton Hall knocked off Xavier.
Yeah, real nice win for Seton Hall. Seton Hall is not getting national accolades. They're somehow still floating below the radar, nowhere close to the rankings. This is a Seton Hall team that over the last, I think, 6 or 7 weeks has only lost to 1 team, and that was Butler. And this is in the Big East, which isn't exactly, it's not like they're doing this in an under-the-radar conference. I mean, Nova looked really good today, but I mean, Seton Hall, Xavier, we were talking about them as a potential 1 seed. Seton Hall took them apart for the second time in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, and John, Xavier, are they even a 2 seed anymore? Or do they think they're going to drop to the 3 line?
I think there's a chance that West Virginia can overlap Xavier right now, but given the way the brackets may be shaping up, that's a combination you might see facing each other in the Sweet 16 anyhow.
Oh, that'd be a fun one.
That would be. Let's move over to a few more conferences here. The Mountain West semifinal games today as well, as Chalk ends up holding John. San Diego State, Fresno State meeting tomorrow. The question here now, San Diego State, if they lose this game, are they in?
If they lose the game tomorrow, I would say no.
David?
No. And again, judging by how tight the bubble is getting, I know it's a weak bubble, but their profile is even weaker than the weak profiles that we're looking at.
Okay.
Compare this to last year when Wyoming was the only team that really stole a bid, and that came from the same conference here.
Right.
And we could see a bid stolen, of course, with Fresno State, a team that we liked heading into the season but really had a disappointing year, can really make up for all of that if they pick up the win tomorrow.
Right.
Conference USA was semifinal day today as well. And David, we saw not that great of games in either one, really.
No, I mean, they weren't completely. I mean, all the people that didn't go to the games didn't miss much.
But Old Dominion, Middle Tennessee tomorrow. Middle Tennessee, a team that I would argue probably played this, that was they're the 2 seed, but I think they were the second best team all season in the conference. ODU, one of the most disappointing teams in the country. Again, a chance to completely wipe out everything they did in the regular season and make up for it tomorrow, though.
Yeah, and they are potentially dangerous. Their ceiling is high. This is a team that had a very good year last year, was close to the bubble for much of the year. They kind of tapered off at the very end, did very well in the NIT last year, returned everybody, and then were just really disappointing. We watched them play in their exempt tournament. We watched them lose a lot of games that we thought that they should win. But here they are on the cusp of it, and I think they can win this game. They've looked really good in this tournament.
Another storyline for Old Dominion is that their head coach, Jeff Jones, could make the NCAA tournament with a third different team if you count Virginia and American U.
Yeah. And are we looking 14 line here, regardless of who wins this game, we think?
I'm thinking 14 line. That's probably right where it's going to be. I think it would have been 15 line, but some of the upsets have pushed it up a little bit.
Right, yeah.
John, the Mid-American Conference, Akron ended the Cinderella story of Bowling Green today. Buffalo with a nice win over Ohio. Your thoughts on these games and the championship tomorrow between Akron and Buffalo?
It was good mentally for Akron to finally get a more comfortable win after they had a serious scare against Eastern Michigan, although Buffalo was still going to be the defending champs in the MAC, so I still think Akron is going to pull it off.
And David, we've done our under the radar shows all season, and all season long, the third or fourth conference we got to was always the Big Sky, and we said it's Weber State in Montana, and that's it. Let's move on. And guess who's meeting in the championship game in the Big Sky?
Yeah, Weber and Montana. Relatively easy days today for both of them. North Dakota was in there for a little bit, but
that was an overtime victory, actually, David. It was not exactly an easy win by Weber.
Oh, you're right. Okay, yeah.
That was actually a real close, good game.
Yeah. And this is, so Weber, again, has had an easy road to the championship game. Today in overtime and then sweating out Portland State in the first round. Montana's looked better. They really have.
Who do you like, Montana?
It's late. What's that? Yeah, I do like Montana.
Okay. John, we also had semifinals today in the Big West as we keep rolling through these conferences. As Hawaii got by UC Santa Barbara fairly easily. We do not see the scores on the screen, though. Thank you again, CBS. That was Hawaii 88-76 over Santa Barbara. Long Beach with the mild upset over UC Irvine 77-72, setting up Hawaii versus Long Beach. Long Beach swept Hawaii on the season, John.
Yep, although it's going to be pretty hard for Long Beach to beat them a third time, even if it's going to be in their own backyard in Anaheim. And let's not forget Hawaii also has a greater sense of urgency because next year they're not going to be eligible for the Big West or the NCAA tournaments.
Yeah, one of the things about Hawaii, to say that they're a second-half team would be an understatement. They really kind of fooled around. These looked like they were going to be competitive games, and then Hawaii just blew them open, both the quarters and the semis.
Well, let's see if they can do it one more time tomorrow against Long Beach. David, MEAC semifinal day today as we had one last somewhat of an upset team there left in Savannah State. They got their doors blown out. South Carolina State was doing the same to Norfolk. A late run made it a competitive final, though.
Yeah, and this is actually a good storyline. The MEAC, it's way, way, way under the radar, but South Carolina State, I feel really good for them, especially what they went through last year with the threat of their institution, not just their basketball program, the entire school looked like it was going to shut down. There was talk of closing it for multiple years. There was talk of rolling it into the Clemson system and making it, I think, a branch campus for Clemson. This is a really proud institution, as are most of the HBCUs, with a lot of history, a lot of strong identity and connection. And here they are. I mean, what a feel-good story this would be if they could finish this off.
Absolutely, I agree. And John, you picked South Carolina State to win this conference tournament, so you're looking pretty good so far. But John, let me ask you about the Southland, another conference that was in the semifinal round today. Stephen F. Austin, the only team to have gone undefeated in their conference the regular season, completely demolished Houston Baptist today. Corpus Christi snuck by Sam Houston in a real close, a real good game there, actually. Does the train keep rolling tomorrow, the truck keep rolling tomorrow, John?
I would say yes.
David, you agree?
Yeah, Corpus Christi, we liked them a lot during the year, and for a minute, I think we liked them a little more than SFA, but I think SFA finishes it off tomorrow.
And John, we also had semifinals today in the SWAC, which nobody actually got to watch, but we saw the scores. And I guess, John, we're inviting another team into the NIT after what happened today.
That's correct. That's team number 8, thanks to Southern University beating Texas Southern. So we've still only had one single top seed win a conference tournament so far, and that was Chattanooga.
Now we got Southern and Jackson State tomorrow, John. Which way are you going?
I'm probably going to go with Southern U, since they seem to have had the better overall profile in the SWAC this year, even though they were quite a few games behind Texas Southern in the standings.
Yeah, and welcome back Southern to NCAA eligibility, and what another good story.
Yeah.
Those kids got screwed because the administrators weren't doing their jobs, and there were no APR reports, but they've gotten it straightened out. They're back, and again, like South Carolina State, for different reasons, it would be I would be happy for Southern if they got it over the top and got in.
Let's move on. Before we get to the last games that were played today, John, I'm going to throw one other conference at you that did not play today but does have its championship coming up tomorrow, and that's the America East. We haven't talked about this conference in a while because they haven't played since Monday, but the championship game finally, Vermont at Stony Brook. Stony Brook trying to make their first ever NCAA tournament, I believe the only team left that could be a first-time participant this year.
And we've mentioned this multiple times before. They're not going to have to go through Albany this time, but they will have to go through a Vermont team, which actually beat the Seawolves in their home finale just before the end of the regular season.
Heartbreak again for Stony Brook, or do they finally get it done?
I think they're finally going to get it done this time.
I agree. I think that this is their year.
Yeah. Oh, God. They've been so close so many times.
I skipped one conference. I want to go back and hit it now because obviously we still have not gotten the brackets corrected in it yet. But let's show what actually did happen today. First of all, New Mexico State rolled over UMKC. Bakersfield blew out Seattle to set up a semifinal game tomorrow, David, between New Mexico State and Cal State Bakersfield.
Semifinal. Now, I'm a little concerned, Chad. Are you sure about this? You're not just telling me this because you're afraid I'll go crazy on the show, are you?
It makes perfect sense here. The Lopes belong in the NCAA tournament. They're not in the WAC brackets we've seen. They've not participated in a game yet. You got 3 teams left. You need a semifinal and a championship if you have 3 teams left. So New Mexico State, Bakersfield tomorrow. Winner plays Grand Canyon on Sunday.
But one thing I'm worried about is they're going to give a trophy to whoever wins the game tomorrow as opposed to the championship game on Sunday.
It's a consolation trophy, right, David?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. Who do you like tomorrow, David?
New Mexico State. Well, New Mexico State, although Bakersfield has been playing really well.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a good game. We haven't seen hardly any good games in this tournament. I think tomorrow's will be.
And I said earlier I said just a few moments ago that Stony Brook looking for their first ever bid. Bakersfield is another team looking for its first ever NCAA tournament this year as well.
Yeah.
But on that note, let's do a quick update of our committee. And what I can actually do is pull up on our screen here our committee notebook. This is the Hoops HD official NCAA selection committee, because what is it that the NCAA is trying to do, David?
Well, they're trying to basically do what we're doing. This is we're the real committee. Now they're the ones that pick the teams that actually play in the tournament, but we're kind of doing it as a guide for them. Like we're a reference point.
And we
alluded to earlier, the Big Ten spot opened up thanks to Michigan's inclusion in the field today.
Yes.
Yeah, but just briefly, let me explain it to everybody that looks at this and say, what am I looking at here? On the left-hand side there, you've got the automatic bids. Those are the 13 teams that have clinched spots in the field. In the middle section, you have our at-large bids. You see there's 36 teams that we have gone at-large bids. We also note that at least 5 other spots will be opening up here. We have, as of right now, filled all but 2 of those guaranteed spots. So we still have a couple of teams we could fill in,
Right.
and a few more spots still could open depending on what happens in the Atlantic 10 American and the SEC over the next 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
The third column is our under consideration board. These are teams that are still being considered to get bids but are not yet in.
Right.
You note Syracuse and Temple there have lines through them. That's actually because they are our top 2 teams that did not get in as of today, but they still need to be voted back on again along with everybody else in that grouping there.
Right.
Next time we vote tomorrow.
And
Finally,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Keep going.
Yeah, the seed list on the right there, and that's the other thing that we did today. We actually filled in our first 32 teams. Now, this is not going to be the final seed list, however.
Right.
We will be scrubbing and moving these teams around, but this is at least an initial placement for the first top 8 seed lines.
Right.
Did I miss anything, David?
No, I think you got it, and I believe it's time for our daily correspondence.
Yes. Okay, David, I'm going to pull my screen down, and we could put your screen back up now.
Yes, and this is it. And again, we have been corresponding all throughout Championship Week with Committee Chairman Joe Castiglione, and it's just again, we're here as a guide. We're here to help. We're doing this, they're doing this. We're just trying to compare notes, kind of be a support group for one another. And one of the things they're doing, it's like Chad mentioned, that there's at least 2 more spots, maybe 3 spots. Picking those last few teams for the tournament, it can be really stressful. You don't even know how many spots there are going to be. And I realize the committee's probably frustrated with it. They haven't really been through this before. They don't really know what to do. So again, I'm just reaching out. We kind of got upset the other night when I was in Indianapolis and they were in New York. Kind of an olive branch here. It's just picking the last bubble teams into the field can be frustrating. Call, text, or tweet us if you need any help. And we're sending this directly to the chairman. There it goes. And it's away. That's our correspondence. So.
Okay, great. Now he's got that. Now our final thing we'd like to do is check our survival board as well.
Yeah. Oh, crap. Already. Okay, I got to pull. Oh, it's late. Okay, here we go. The survival board. And there it is. Yes, there's the survival board.
Yeah, and what we had heading in today, we had 130 teams that remained as either teams that were locked or even conference champions under consideration, or still alive to potentially win an automatic bid. Included, if we could see teams like Florida Gulf Coast, which had clinched a conference tournament. The Big 12, we'd pretty much locked everything up in there.
Mm-hmm.
The Big East, we had Creighton still on the bubble under consideration heading into today, but that may have gotten cleared out today.
Right. A lot of work done today. It was a real busy day, real eventful day. And you see, like, the bold in all caps are your automatic qualifiers. The italics teams are under consideration. And the bold teams, just bold regular caps, they're not automatic qualifiers, but they're automatically in because they're in bold. And the NCAA, again, they use this as a resource. It's a big job. It's a frustrating job. This board exists to kind of help them out. They can come to this board, use it as a resource so they know what they're going to be doing.
Okay, so why don't we update and see what happened as a result of today's games?
Okay, and then there it is. And we're down to 95.
95 teams remain. This is, I mean, we'll see a few more teams come off tomorrow, but I believe at the end of the day last year we were just under 80 teams left, so we're approaching that number again this year. A lot of more teams that went into bold, a lot more teams that from italics that actually fell off the board as well if you look through there, and a lot of the lose and you're screwed teams fell off today as well. Another big day tomorrow though, but on that note, any final thoughts, John? Let me start with you.
We only have a 24 game schedule tomorrow with 14 automatic bids up for stakes, as well as 10 semifinal games from 5 conferences. But as you can see over the past couple of days, business has certainly picked up in college basketball.
Yeah, David.
Championship week has been insane, and it's been insane from the very first night. I know it's always exciting, and when you have 40, 50 elimination games in a day, even if 28 of them suck, there's still always 1 or 2 good games to watch. it's been so good that it's almost been impossible to take it all in. I don't ever recall a week where there were this many exciting. Look at everything that happened today.
I'll tell you that I had 3 or 4 screens going and was unable to follow every single game, and you know, you've watched there's great finishes going on and you're like, what, who, what, how'd that happen? I was watching the great finish over here. So things in terms of the number of games going on simultaneously, it does calm down a bit tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to watch almost everything.
Yeah, and even with those simultaneous games, like the point I was making is that generally, like a lot of them in the past, they're blowouts or they're not that important. Like this year, it seems like it's been just about every game.
And multiple half-court shots going in, whether they counted or not today. Last-minute buzzer beaters. It was one of the more incredible, exciting days, at least that I recall.
Mm-hmm.
But on that note, on behalf of David Griggs and John Salika, I'm Chad Sherwood. Have a great night. We'll talk to you tomorrow night with our final edition of the Championship Week Video Notebook. So we'll talk to you tomorrow.